So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar on freighter aircraft. Is it now the end of the downward trend? I'm joined today with three speakers, Russi Batlivala, Steven Polmans, and Mikko Tainio. So before diving into the topic, I would like to introduce the three of them briefly to all of you. So Russi comes from an aviation family and worked for a number of commercial airlines before joining aircraft charter specialist Chapman Freeborn back in '87. During his 30 years with the company, he has been involved in setting up a number of key global charter operations, including subsidiary businesses basically all around the world, Africa, Asia, Europe, and even Northern America. And Russi was appointed CEO of the Chapman Freeborn Group in 2009. And since then, he has been absolutely instrumental in developing a vision and a strategy for the company's global expansion. This afternoon, we also have Steven Polmans, who spent most of his career in the world of aviation and held a management position in the handling industry. He joined Brussels Airport as cargo marketing manager back in 2010, and Steven was appointed head of cargo and logistics in 2002, where he has been in charge of the overall cargo strategy of the Brussels Airport. Back in 2016, Steven was also one of the founding fathers of Air Cargo Belgium and the first chairman of this newly established Air Cargo organization. And more recently, last year, Steven took over the role of chairman at IACA, the International Air Cargo Association, a position he still holds today. Last but not least, I warmly welcome Mikko Tainio, who is the managing director of Finnair Cargo. Mikko has been with Finnair for more than 15 years, covering a broad range of departments in executive positions from business control to ground operations. Between 2017 and 2019, he restructured and headed the Finnair hub catering operations, where he brought substantial efficiencies and a major leap in customer satisfaction. Most recently, last year, he started as managing director of Finnair Cargo, a growing business with focus especially on Europe and Asia. He thrives to make the company the most consumer-centric, smartest air cargo operator in the world. And I'm welcoming you. I'm Agnès Leroux. I work for Airlines for Europe, a European association founded in 2016. We have 16 European groups and airlines as our members, representing both legacy and low-cost carriers. 80% of our members have cargo activities, and on a yearly basis, together, they transport more than 5 million tons per year. So now that I've introduced our speakers, I would like to make a few introductory remarks to set the scene of our discussions. Obviously, we are this afternoon discussing the COVID-19 crisis, and the latest IATA figures on global air freight demonstrate that the demand dropped by 28% this April. Compared to 2019, this is really the sharpest fall we've ever recorded. But nonetheless, there was really insufficient capacity to meet this demand due to the loss of belly cargo operations on passenger aircraft. The COVID-19 crisis has created really an unprecedented situation for aviation and air freight in particular, underlining once more the interdependency between passenger and cargo flights. So we've seen that this capacity crunch has severely and is severely damaging global supply chains with longer shipping times, higher costs, and global impact. Nonetheless, the air freight sector, and we have a strong representative here with us today, the sector has demonstrated its capacity for resilience and innovation, for instance, by proposing new routes where needed or repurposing passenger aircraft for cargo only. So I believe this conversation is very timely, and I'm very honored to have our three speakers with me today to discuss whether, let's say, the spring 2019 is indeed the end of the downward trend in air cargo, and trying to look together at the recovery and beyond. So maybe my first question on the COVID-19 crisis. which made apparent also to non-specialists that the reliance on passenger flights is key for global air freight. So maybe we could start with Steven. If you could develop a bit for us whether or which solutions were found in this period of capacity crunch, and what do you believe is this a starting point for new business processes, new business models going forward?
Thank you very much. And I think what you very well pointed out is that especially the relation between belly capacity and the passenger operations and cargo logistics in general is really important. This was not a crisis for the supply chain, but we have been impacted by the capacity crunch. In a normal crisis situation, you will see that demand goes down and that is being followed by capacity going down. This time we indeed saw that capacity suddenly dropped heavily, and as a result, air cargo volumes have really take a hit, about 30% in general. Without that capacity crunch, we would not have seen it, the same effect. And that is, of course, having a big impact. The biggest change we have seen is the increase of freighter utilization in global level. A lot more hours have been operated by freighters. Quickly, freighters have been rerouted to those markets with the highest demand and the highest uplift. And at the same time, very quickly, passenger airlines were able to start using their grounded passenger aircraft for cargo operations only. And this really helped us in making sure that that capacity crunch did not have the same impact as you would have seen if that would not have happened. And that really kept the supply going. Is this a future business model? I don't think so. We will go back to more normal operations. Passenger operations are restarting. That means belly capacity is coming back to the market. And I think we will go more or less back to a normal situation pre-COVID. What did we learn from it? I think in general, a lot of people in our industry realized how important cargo is also for their business model. Airlines have seen it, airports have seen it. So I think that will play a more important role. And I also think that if this ever happens again, we will not need 2 weeks to start these passenger operations for cargo. We will see this happening in the next 2 hours of such an event. And I think this flexibility and this agility is going to be an important one. But I do not expect that in 6 months that the fundamentals of the way cargo operates is going to be completely different.
Thank you. And Rusi, do you have a different view on this?
No, I agree wholeheartedly with what Steven's saying. I mean, I think we also need to be very realistic and honest that, you know, the boom that we've experienced in April was a boom that was really made up of cargo that was already planned for air freight that had to move, and then most importantly PPE, personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, sanitation materials. This was what the real boom was all about, and the markets in the freighter aircraft were flying at absolute record hours and moving this particular kind of equipment. And that's what really was what the boom was about. And I think everybody realized that in order to move, you know, what is in effect humanitarian type of equipment comes down to the freighters, and that's what the freighters were doing. And you know, the resilience of freighters and what they can actually do and how they are still flying when everybody else is grounded, I hope is something that will play a role going forward when major manufacturers decide how they're going to plan their supply chain. Maybe these times will remind them that you know, the bellies are dependent on passengers, and you know, cargo is always second place, because the passenger will always pay more than the cargo does. So freighters are there, and freighters have shown their face and have shown just how resilient they are. We started this year with some major closures of freighter operators. And it was very sad to see that some of the 747 operators had not been able to keep going, and that the market was so slow, and there was talk of some of the very big guys also maybe even closing down. And obviously today it's a different story. We've the industry has had a big boost, and I agree with Stephen. I don't think this is going to make any huge change going forward, but at least for the next couple of years, I think there will be a lot of focus on freighters. And I think as an industry, we really need to try to take advantage of that and make sure that we're looking at the now situation and taking advantage of it, and making sure that freighters are pushed forward, and that we are marketing them properly, and making sure that the industry realizes that when the going gets tough, freighters help.
Yeah. And Mikko, would you like to tell us a bit more about what were the solutions found on the cargo side, and specifically by Finnair to tackle this crisis?
Sure. And as Finnair, so we have a lot of exposure between the Europe and Asia, especially. So that's our main market. We are one of the among most of the markets. We're one of the top 3 airlines to be transporting both passengers and cargo. Of course, we're mainly on the passenger side of the business, but of course, cargo playing a big part of our strategy as well. So really, what we started seeing was already in the beginning of February that the first impacts of the COVID-19 were seen in our China routes, and of course then since the closure of the US airspace especially, so started the capacity crunch and the closure of the routes all over our network. So after that one, we really quickly, as the learnings from the previous crisis had shown, really the cargo actually keeps flying even if the passengers don't. So even if there's been crisis in the past, so the cargo still needs to fly. We were very flexible in making sure that then we are capable of meeting the demands of our existing customers and also these special customers when it comes to the COVID-19 protective equipment or anything else that might come across. So the flexibility that we had in place to use our passenger belly aircraft to be utilized to carry this cargo was in a way prepared for, and we were very efficient in making use of it. What can be said is that really, if you look at the next couple of years, so if you first take out almost 50% or more than 50% of the cargo capacity, which the bellies of the passenger airlines actually bring to the market. So if it will take the IATA forecasted 2 to 3 years for the airlines to return to 2019 levels, it will of course mean that there will be a capacity crunch on the bellies going forward. So as discussed, and perfectly agree with all of you that most likely the capacity crunch will lead to an increase in yields, and of course as a consequence will likely increase the need for freighters or additional capacity going forward. Also, having said that, so still when the airlines will be doing ramp-ups, and as we're planning the ramp-ups that is starting in a week's time for most of our biggest routes. So what we will be seeing is that the most important cargo routes will be returning back to normal first. So the cargo will be a more important driver for the passenger airlines going forward because of the higher yields for the next coming months at least.
Thank you all for your insights. I would like now to move slightly to a different topic, because before the pandemic, we really had at the policy side environmental concerns quite high on the agenda, right, for aviation. So I'm wondering whether you believe environment should remain a priority for the immediate future or for the present, or should we rather focus on restarting operation first before we can afford to make the investment? And how can actually green technologies support air cargo growth in the future? Maybe Lucy, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I personally, Agnes, I don't think that this is a subject that we in the freighter business can really comment on at the moment. At the moment, it's all about flying as much as possible and being there for the market. You know, the environmental issues are ongoing and have been ongoing for years and years. Airbus and Boeing have produced, and you know, since I've been in the industry, you know, I've seen aircraft taking off here at Frankfurt Airport with thick brown streams of smoke coming out of them in the early days. And today, MECO has a beautiful state-of-the-art green aircraft, as green as they come in the market. I don't personally think that this is a subject that we can actually really do anything about. We operate the aircraft as economically and as green as possible, but really it's down to the manufacturers to produce these aircraft as environmentally friendly as possible.
Any different views, Mikko, maybe?
Yeah, so first of all, I think the restart is of course what everybody is focusing on. So without the restart, there's really not much need for the green policies. So we need to get back to flying so as quickly as we can. But at the same time, as Finnair and many of the other airlines as well, but as such, our policy is that we are focusing on the environmentals and the sustainability a lot in our strategy and the strategy period. So we're going to be decreasing our CO2 emissions by 50% in the next 4 years' time. So we're going to hold on to that target even through the COVID crisis, and that is something which we're very much committed to. As such, so of course the rest of the development items that we have in store, so they've been on a pause because of course the special situation requires us to make certain prioritizations. But we are planning to continue all of our environmental and sustainability policies right after the holiday period in the summertime. So we're not going to stop anything. So we do think that the sustainability is here to stay, and that's going to continue, and we'll be committed to that one.
Very good. What about Brussels Airport, Steven?
Yeah, I think I make a mix of both, and I agree with what Lucy says. On the very short term, it's about flying as much as possible to provide the necessary capacity. But that is for me on the very, very short term. I think that we need to find a balance. Sustainability is going to remain very high on the agenda. And I think that after this crisis, and very soon, it will be even higher on the agenda. I do not think that we can say that it's up to the aircraft manufacturers to take care of this. It's absolutely something they are working on. But as an industry in total, sustainability is more than just the emissions of aircraft. It's about everything we do and all the processes we do. And it's also how we operate. The whole discussion in Europe, should you have a flight of 200 kilometers, can't you replace it by train? That is also part of the sustainability. And I think what is really important for air cargo and why we need to put sustainability very high on our agenda, it's going to make air cargo more acceptable to the wider public, because we do take our responsibility. So in order to have possibilities to grow, we need to work to this acceptance towards the image we have on air cargo. And for that, sustainability is very, very important.
Thank you. And what about concretely, if you can expand a bit further on that, what are the programs that you're pushing at your level? Are there ongoing work for electrification of the ground handling or renewable fuels? What are you looking at specifically?
Yeah, I think as an airport, we are trying to do a lot, also with ACI, with the zero carbon programs. That means more and more solar panels, water waste renewal, electrification of all vehicles. So a lot of that is happening on an airport level. And I'm also very pleased that with TIACA, the International Air Cargo Association, we are also launching a sustainability program for the air cargo industry, especially to look at the whole supply chain and to see where we as a supply chain can make progress. Because there is no benefit if, as a single stakeholder, I'm doing some efforts to become more sustainable and I am increasing more waste for the other ones in the supply chain. We really have to look at this as an industry from A to Z and what we can do together. And it's indeed, sometimes with a very small investment, I can create a huge benefit for the next one in the supply chain. And it's this kind of collaboration we are looking for as an association, as a global association, to really start working to kind of a global logistics index and sustainability index for the supply chain.
Very good. Would one of you would like to comment on that?
No, I think in general, air freight has some really bad press when it comes to sustainability. I was on a tube in London about a year ago, and I saw an advert from a fresh food wholesaler that actually put on his advert and said, we do not use air freight, and was advertising with that. And so, TIACA is without doubt the best body to get the message across that air freight is may have a bad press, but it's not all bad, and we do a lot of good, and we're moving a lot of freight around the world that people don't really understand and see. We have the same issues as passenger flights, and there's no reason why air cargo should be worse off than the passenger flights, because it's basically the same airplane. Most of the time, it's the same airplane. So Stephen has his work cut out.
And what about Finnair Cargo? What are your more concrete initiatives that you could share with us?
Yeah. One example is the push for change, so which we're actually copying both on the cargo side and the passenger side. So for the passengers and the cargo customers are therefore able to compensate for their CO2 emissions. So that is something which we're really proud of. So there's two ways to do that. So there's the compensation way of compensating the emissions, and then the biofuel possibility where you can actually buy the amount of biofuel that you're then spending to deliver your freight from A to B. So those are that's the main initiative that we are targeting. Of course, we are very well equipped and located to make sure that actually together with the efficient aircraft that we are using, the A350s, as mentioned, and our hub in Helsinki, so it actually brings us a fuel consumption benefit in comparison to many of the carriers. So that is something that we are really trusting and are proud of. At the same time, of course, we do need the European level and global level approaches. For example, the airspace use in Europe is not as efficient as it could be, and there is something that we all need to push for politically in making sure that we actually can fly the cargo more efficiently and fuel efficiently. But at the same time, as mentioned, so there will always be a place for the air cargo. So you can't really avoid it. You can't have your factories closing down or the medical equipment, especially shown by the COVID crisis. So you can't just have everything stashed all around the world. You do need to have the fast logistics available in the cases that you need them to be. So I think the crisis has really shown that to be a must for the world.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the EU level. The Commission in the last few weeks has been calling for a green and digital recovery. I think we've touched upon some of the green elements, but what about the digital transformation of air cargo in the ongoing and in the next few months and years? Again, I think it could be quite interesting to our audience to hear about the ongoing initiatives, and also whether you believe the COVID-19 crisis could be an accelerator of digitalization, and whether this is actually a longer term trend, or is it just a one-off? Maybe Rusi?
No, I'll pass this one over to Mikko and to Stephen.
Thanks. I could perhaps start. So I think the air cargo, after being serving in the airline industry for more than 15 years in several departments, so I can safely say that perhaps the air cargo is a bit further away on the digitalization than the rest of the airline industry and especially some other industries in general. So we need to catch up, and there's a lot that we can do. And it's very much based on the distribution capabilities and integrating with our customers. So that will be there. The main question, as you perfectly stated, Agnes, is that is this going to be making it faster or slower? So of course there's going to be a pause. We actually went back to the basics in many of our sales and systems and so on when we started the cargo-only flights and discussions with our customers. So we actually took out of use some of the systems that we normally use and started having direct discussions with the customers because of course the systems after a lot of cancellations of the flights were not up to speed. So we were quite manual at times, but really on the long term, the digitalization will be there. There will be a pause. The question is, how will our customers react? And what is the consequences? Of course, they do have their savings initiatives and such. So will they be adequately investing into the digitalization as well, and will they be equipped to take it on as quickly as we do hope, and working together? So that is really the question. I do trust that actually the COVID-19 crisis would likely be a driver that drives the digitalization into play faster, because then all the companies do need to take the new ways of working, more efficient ways of working into action quicker.
Steven?
Yeah, when Mikko said our industry is a bit further away and we need a catch-up, I think that he was very, very polite. I would rather say that our industry is still in the dark ages, and we have a lot more to do than just catch up a little bit. And it really is an issue for our industry. I think that this crisis is not going to make the world look different tomorrow, but I'm a big believer that it will speed up trends that we were already seeing in the past. And digitization was one of them. So yes, I think that digitization will absolutely get a boost thanks to this crisis for several reasons, because of productivity, efficiency, but also for a good example that which we never used in the past when we were developing digital tools. Suddenly contactless becomes a new driver. This was never used in the past, but thanks to digital, you can avoid human contact. And for a lot of companies, that becomes more important today, or a more important argument than you had in the past. I think one of the mistakes we have made in the past as an industry, that we have been focusing, when we spoke about digitization, too much on what was happening in the air parts for the airlines. And I think that we should have, from the beginning, looked much more, how are we going to digitize the supply chain? If you look how the integrators are doing it, how Amazon is doing it, how Alibaba is doing it, they are digitizing the supply chain. And we have been, thanks to the efforts of IATA, we have been very much looking as an industry, how can we accommodate what the airlines need for digitization. But that was not a full solution, and I think that has been one of the main reasons why we did not make the progress that we needed to do. And that is what you see changing in the industry today. It's much more about a collaboration to the benefit of everybody, and not a whole group working to the benefit of one part of the supply chain. And I think that is going to be the biggest game changer, and then the speed up of the COVID crisis, why we will see big progress being made in the months and years to come.
Yeah, and on continuing maybe a bit on digitalization, I think especially for cargo, a big question is regarding customs and e-customs, and there again is the question of standards, not only at EU level, we are now talking between Europeans, but also at international level. So how do you see also those standards for digitalization moving forward? Because we know it's also sometimes the barrier, right? It takes a lot of time, and it's difficult to find agreement at the international level. So can we be hopeful, and can we use COVID to push a few elements at ICAO maybe, or other standardization bodies?
Yeah, Absolutely, yeah. And again, I think that if one thing was again very visible thanks to the crisis, is the need for air cargo and the complexity that often goes with the regulations and air cargo. And I think that the crisis made that very visible, and that is something that helps us in discussing with authorities. However, that being said, and then we come again to, it's always easy to find an excuse why we are not doing something. Honestly speaking, when we are talking about digitization, it's not because customs in one country is not participating, that is an excuse not to do digitization. Digitization gives us the opportunity to change all our processes, the way we work. So we should not do it for customs. Digitization we should do because of what the change we can make in our business model. And the customs automatization, that's going to be like the cherry on the cake. Today it is like the cake. So we are focusing and finding the excuses not to move forward, and not seeing that behind us there's an awful lot of opportunities we can do, benefits we have in our own hands. So let's not focus on a customs country that is difficult, on an authority that is not helping us, or on an airline that can't do e-airable. You will always find excuses why not to do. Let's focus on the progress we can make. We have started in Brussels because of the problems with e-airable. We have started an open data sharing platform we call BruCloud within the air cargo community. And instead of giving companies the benefit which you should have if you have e-airable from A to the end, we offer them solutions and opportunities locally. And by sharing data, we make sure that at least local customs are already taken care of. But we gave them some benefits and we let them experience day-to-day operational benefits of what you can do if you digitize and if you do data sharing. And suddenly, companies who never wanted to share data because, there was no e-airable and customs in China was not helping, suddenly they are absolutely sharing data without any problem because they have felt that you don't have to wait for customs in China to cooperate. You can already have benefits today. And if tomorrow China customs cooperates with one simple plug and play, we can make all data available already. Can you imagine how long it would take if suddenly China would say, let's go forward? Then I need 6 months to get everybody on board. Okay, we are ready on our side. And I think this is the kind of changes we are seeing on the industry level. And I think that's going to be very important. And that kind of digital change will be the driver for the future. It's not about e-airable, it's not about e-freight. It's about thinking digital and thinking differently.
Yeah, and I must say that we really appreciate the work that Brussels Airport has done in this matter. So we've been flying a lot to Brussels in the course of this crisis as well, and really much appreciate the work that you've been doing over the course of the years. So that is really the case. When it comes to the COVID-19, really helping with the situation. So I think from the authority perspective, so we're dealing with quite a few different European countries which were then transporting the PPEs from China and Asia into Europe. And I think especially now many of the authorities, they really saw what the quick customs processes can really do, because in a matter of hours you do need to get your gear out of the aircraft and delivered. So really the customs processes were quite often they were one of the areas which we needed to take really carefully into account when we on the promises that we could give to our customers. So for sure, I am sure that that the authorities are now taking that into account and in a way pushing each one another to make sure that the customs process gets smoother in the future as well, to enable faster transport. So that is for sure.
If I can just add that, Agnes, at the end of the day, air freight is the most expensive mode of transport. And if I'm going to convince my customer to move freight on air freight, it has to be in the fastest way. It has to be with as much digitalization going through. The problem that we have as an industry, and this is why I didn't want to comment before, but we have so many stakeholders, and unfortunately, each stakeholder in the chain has their interests. and trying to bring everybody together. And I'm going to go back to Stephen and Tiaka again. That's his job and his role, trying to bring everybody together. That's one of the goals of Tiaka. But at the end of the day, air freight lives from people saying, yes, I want to put it on an airplane. And what we need as an industry, we need more people to do that. And in order to do that, we need a simplified and a clear way of moving freight from A to B with as little delay as possible. And customs is one part of it, but there's a lot of other parts of it, which, as I said, the various stakeholders. If you bring all that together, then freighters will never be in danger, because it will always be a excellent product without problems and moving freight quickly from A to B at an acceptable price.
No, I think it's a fair point, and actually it provides a good bridge for the next part of the discussion, because we've seen actually air cargo getting quite a lot of visibility during the crisis, much more than just a few months ago. And the pandemic definitely stressed the importance of air freight for vital sectors such as pharmaceuticals or basic PPE that you've mentioned also a few times. So I'd like to hear your views on how air freight was actually a tool to sustain the international value chains of the pharmaceutical industry. Whether you have figures to share with our listeners to illustrate that point, because I think this is one of the elements which really was also quite mediatized in the last few weeks.
Maybe if I can take the lead on that one. As Brussels, we claim to be the leading pharma hub specialized in the transport of pharmaceuticals, because Belgium is very important when it comes to the production of pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very important industry in our country. And in average, about 4 to 6% only of all air cargo is pharmaceuticals. So it is not the biggest part of what we transport, but it's of course a very crucial part and a very important one. In Brussels, our market share is about double. We do between 10 to 12% of pharmaceuticals, and we have the benefit that we have a very close relationship with the pharma industry. So the moment the capacity dropped, we have been very quickly talking to the pharma industry, and we have seen that in average, also thanks to the fact that this is very important cargo, but also cargo that can afford a certain price increase, that especially for pharmaceuticals, price was not the most important topic in the past few months and weeks. It was about capacity and flying the goods. We have seen other commodities like perishables from Africa, for example, who cannot afford to suddenly pay twice the price. And there we have seen a big drop in the amount of perishables flying in the world. So pharma quickly, thanks to the price elasticity, was able to find the capacity they needed. We have seen freighters rerouting their aircraft to transport pharmaceuticals to certain markets that they would never operate before. But it has also shown the strength and the agility of the air cargo industry, in a sense that those commodities that are needed most, they have been operating. Today we have passenger flights flying between Brussels and several cities in the States and in Asia, only transporting in their bellies pharmaceuticals. They are operating 3, 4, 5 up to daily flights with 777s, with A350s, full of pharmaceuticals, just to keep that lifeline going. And again, I think that for me the most important thing, air cargo was not in a crisis. Airlines have been in a crisis, and it affected us, the passenger especially, and air cargo has shown an amazing strength in very quickly adapting and giving solutions to all kind of companies in the market.
Yeah, I think we can perfectly agree. So not only the pharmaceuticals, but pretty much anything that needed to be transported via air. So everything has gotten where it was supposed to be delivered. So I think as such there has been a capacity crunch. It's just a matter of the pricing, and then perhaps some delays. But for example, for us at Finnair, so we did see a jump in the amount of pharmaceuticals. mainly through two drivers. So of course, the shipping industry, for example, and some other modes of transportation. So they were very hard hit in the early phases of the COVID-19. So that was actually the rest of the supply chain was broken, and air cargo was actually then taking its part and in a way fixing some of the problems of the rest of the supply chain. So bringing even more importance to our industry. And at the same time, there were quite a few airlines, not the cargo carriers, but the passenger airlines, which were in a way they were more busy going into administration or staying out of business than flying the air cargo flights. So we were actually winning quite a lot of capacity and customers from some of the other airlines. So from those factors, we were actually growing pretty heavily, and as mentioned, so operating with Brussels, for example, quite a few times on the pharmaceuticals.
I think as much as there's been an up, there's also been a down. So the automotive industry, a huge user of air freight. We saw factories closing. The initial weeks where there was still freight in the system that had to fly to get out. But after that, the factories closed down, and the crunch has almost gone away, because the initial crunch was really there when the PPE came about. But there has been other freight that has also been continuing to fly. E-commerce. I'm sure you all have various people delivering packages to you at home every day, and have been, when people have been sitting at home, the best thing they do is go onto Amazon and order stuff. That's all been flying, and that's continued to fly, and it's probably been flying at higher rates than previously. But I mean, from our perspective, we've really kept e-commerce going, and the pharma industry going, and Stephen's right with Africa and the fruit and veg. All of these things have been kept going by air freight, and it's not only pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now I'd like to move a bit the conversation to more the support needed to the air freight industry. So we've seen responses from different member states varying quite importantly, depending on political decision to support the whole sector or not. Even within Europe, we've also, seen air crew being unable to cross borders when they were either going to their airport of allocation or coming back, which was quite a shock, within Europe, where we were used to the Schengen space, for instance. But we've also seen, if we're talking more about the global value chains, about challenging operations in India, in particular in April with a full lockdown. So we've seen different challenges in different areas of the globe. So my question here is what could politicians have done better to support air cargo? And now, as we are slowly getting to the recovery aspects, what remains to be done, in your views?
Okay, well, if I can start, from my perspective, I actually am very, very, very positive in the way that things have been done here in Germany. We had aircraft coming into Germany that were not normally allowed to come in because of noise regulations. The government waived for certain clients the restrictions on old aircraft, aged aircraft, noisy aircraft, which is not normal, which is really not normal. On top of that, the night curfew bans were lifted depending on what the cargo was. So if you were bringing in PPE into Frankfurt or into Munich, they gave you the option to come in at night. And all in all, I have to say, there's been a lot of, it's only been good as far as I'm concerned. One funny story right at the beginning, and I'm not going to name the airport or the country, but we applied to operate a PPE, a humanitarian flight into the capital city of a Central European airport and a country, and were told that because of slot constraints, we weren't allowed to come to that airport, but we could go to another airport that was just close by. And of course, the first thing we did, we picked up the phone and said, hey, hang on, are you not aware that 80% of the flights aren't happening? There can't be a slot restriction. And we were then given the permission to operate in there. But apart from that, certainly from my perspective in operating as many flights as we have done with passenger aircraft and cargo aircraft, I have to say also Fifth Freedom flights operating directly out of China for example, with a Russian aircraft directly from China into Germany. Again, the Civil Aviation Authority has been very lenient, been very, very flexible, and been very fast. So I can't really complain. Maybe others have different experiences.
I actually have to agree with Rasi. So really, the pretty much everybody has been very flexible. So be it the airports with the slots restrictions and the authorities with the overflights of be it Russia or China or the different authorities requirements on the aircraft. So a lot of flexibility there. We've seen airports waiving the slots, and of course the parking charges even have been waived. And really, if there's been a reason to fly somewhere, especially with the PPEs as mentioned, so really everything has been as smooth as possible. So really, one would hope that it would actually continue even then during the normal times when they come back. There is one example of a case where we do think that there might be more coordination needed. So there's quite a lot of airports where the crew, and that was mentioned by Agnes, you as well. So the crew has been overnighting, and there's some crew regulations and the crossing of the borders. So quite a few of the different airports and the authorities of different countries, they have different regulations on how to treat the crew of the cargo flights. So who are going to go through testing and who are going to stay in which hotel and where do they need to sleep and what is going to be the governance there. So that is one area where similarities should be. So there should be more similarities between the countries. So now it was a kind of like a mixed bag, but of course the situation as it was different for each and every country and understandably pretty difficult to govern. So that is understandable, but that is something which causes some gray hair during the crisis.
I can only agree, and I think that probably it would be more fun and more interesting for you and the audience if we can focus on the things that went wrong and all the improvements. But if we are very fair, we also have to see on all the things that really went well. And of course, there is a learning, but this was a crisis. And a new situation for everybody. I think it's the first time in a very, very long time we had this kind of global pandemic. If everything would run smoothly, we would not be talking about a crisis. So yes. I think that in general, as air cargo, I think, again, we did a tremendous job and a lot of governments supported the traffic. Will be there learnings afterwards in case a new crisis comes? Absolutely. Because there are things that can be done better. And like I said, things that probably took 2 weeks now to get done, next time we have done it, there is experience, it will be done in 2 hours. And I think it's just important that when we go back to normal, that a few things where we can make improvement, that on a high enough level, European level, but also with ICAO, we do foresee that in case this happens again, we can act even quicker than we did today. But in this case, I would also like to focus on the positive things and the agility that we've shown, despite everything, which for me is indeed the one that stays with me.
Well, that's good. We don't have to be negative all the time. We can also applaud both the work of the authorities and of the stakeholders which you represent today. So it's true. I mean, it has run smoothly and it has continued to run despite all the hurdles on the way. So maybe based on what we've discussed this afternoon, I would like to ask each of you, how would you answer then the question or the title of this webinar? So is COVID-19 the end of the downward trend for air freight and why? Kusi?
Okay. Okay. I mean, I've been in the industry for so long. I feel that we don't seem to learn very well or very quickly. So I am optimistic for the next 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of work still to be done. We are in focus of the world. We've done an incredible job. I think one of the reasons that we were in the situation that we were is a huge overcapacity, just incredible amounts of capacity. And to be fair, aircraft manufacturers were, when it comes to freighters in particular, aircraft manufacturers are building wonderful airplanes like the A350 and the 777 that basically take away the need for full freighters. The 777 carries 40 tons across the Atlantic. 747 carries 100 tons, and that's 2.5 flights. And if you look at flight radar, for example, on a normal day, you're seeing hundreds of aircraft flying across the Atlantic. This huge amount of capacity is, you've got to ask yourself, and I think these few weeks, months has kind of brought up this question: do we really need that amount of capacity, and do we really need it at the kind of rates and prices? When I talk about air freight rates, talking to freight forwarders who are complaining that they can't get a euro rate from here to South Africa or wherever. There is a cost to everything, and I think the reason we've been fighting as much as we have as an industry is because there's just been a huge amount of overcapacity, and there are some niche players that are doing well, and the integrators they've continued to do very well because of the way they package their air freight. As a whole, but I hope that we as an industry and consumers learn that overcapacity is maybe great to go for 10 euros to Palma, but it doesn't really help. It doesn't really help our environment, and to be honest, it's a drain on everybody. So my feeling is COVID is now highlighted air cargo, and I think we really need to take advantage of that situation that we're in at the moment. Air cargo has done a fantastic job, and we really need to push that. And depending on how we push that, and depending on how airlines and aircraft manufacturers are building aircraft and where we go in terms of capacity, that will decide the future of air cargo.
Thank you.
I agree. If I have young people in my team and we look at the evolution of cargo for the last 20 to 30 years, they always ask what happened in 2008, because you have a huge drop and then up again on the financial crisis. I think people joining in 2030 in the team and they look at the cargo volumes, they will see two drops, one in 2008 for the financial crisis, one in 2020 for COVID. But COVID is not going to change the world. There are other factors having a bigger impact on the future of air cargo. And COVID is going to have maybe an impact on those trends, nearshoring, stock levels, on the way we deal with supply chain. But air cargo has always found its place. In the 90s, we were transporting all these electronics. Today, that's much less, and it's pharmaceuticals, and now it's e-commerce. I think air cargo is a niche market. We only do 0.5% of total global logistics. So I always talk to my colleagues in maritime, and I say a little wave in your business model is like a hurricane for us, because we are so little. If 0.5% of maritime would come to us, we would double our tonnage. So we have to look it into perspective. And we have one thing that nobody else has, and that's the speed. If you want to transport goods, and that is always going to happen very fast and efficient, you need air cargo. And that is typically in times of crisis, but for certain commodities, always the case. So we will remain that niche market. I'm not expecting us to double. I'm not expecting us to go away. What I'm sure of is that COVID will not be ending or stimulating air cargo. That is going to be done by other economical and environmental factors globally.
Fully agree. So the COVID-19, that's still going to be a passing period in time, and the general trends will stay as they were, and it will be more impacted by the GDPs and the global trade wars if there should be any, and the Brexits and things like this, and we will get back to normal in any time soon. So that will be the return to the normal trends in the next couple of months and years time. So really, as such, it's been an interesting period, but at the end of the day, it probably doesn't really change much other than delay some of the things and maybe push some things further a bit quicker.
And if I can add to that, maybe when I'm talking to my colleagues on the passenger side, and especially now that we are looking, how will air travel look in the future and what should we do as an airport, I do feel the difference. The way they are looking at the new normal is completely different than for us. We are more like adjusting our strategy for cargo, and we see some things going faster and a lot of things maybe disappearing, but our strategy remains intact for 90%. For my colleagues on the passenger side, I think really have to reinvent everything, because there they see that in the months and years to come, COVID really impacts their business fundamentally. And that's a big difference with air cargo and supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for your insights. Maybe to conclude the discussion, I mean, we've seen that this health crisis had unprecedented consequences with travel bans, confinement for most of us, working from home, new actually professional rhythm. So I wanted to ask you for a more personal or take on the most, for you, what was the most striking development of element of this COVID crisis for you on the professional side? What would you take away from COVID? Maybe what would you like to see continuing forward? What would you like to avoid in the coming months?
So if I can start, so of course, being a newcomer in the business in comparison to the others in the panel, but really, I think it was striking, and of course, from the whole airline industry's perspective, that really the speed of the capacity crunch and the crisis that we were seeing. So really, we are always doing a lot of scenario work at Finnair. So what's going to happen in the future? There's a pessimistic scenario and there's an optimistic one. But actually what we ended up doing is that we had a pessimistic scenario still in January, and then we had an even more pessimistic scenario in February, and still even more pessimistic in March. So really the speed and the extent of the crisis, so that really was something that really is something that will be forever remembered. But at the same time, we were really able to turn around quite quickly our thinking on the business side. So of course, there's always been these cargo-only flights with the passenger aircraft, but really, this time around we needed to turn the whole company around with pretty much from zero to start up with the new operations model, which is not very easy to do in a passenger airline, I would assume, because not a lot of the aircraft or the airlines were able to do that as quickly as we could. So really to find the new operations model where at the same time you were actually laying off and temporarily laying off a lot of your staff and preparing to go to almost zero operations. So that was really something which will be forever remembered.
Shall I go next?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Okay. From my perspective, and Mikko, and Anis, I've only been in this industry. I spent my whole life working with air cargo, and everybody talks about an unprecedented situation. It is definitely an unprecedented situation. You know, we had the eruption of the Icelandic volcano. Thank you. Back a few years ago, which was sorry.
You can say the name of the volcano.
I can't remember the name, no. But anybody who can, please go ahead. But and you know, we've had issues. We've had we've had humanitarian crises. The tsunami of 2001, where the air freight community pulled together and literally, within hours and days there were freighter aircraft flying around. But this has definitely been unprecedented, and for me, I'm really proud of what the industry's done. I mean, rising to the task And this is not, this is not just my own organization. We have people working 24 hours a day, sitting in their houses as well, in sometimes in cupboards and rooms, and where the rest of their family are not being disturbed, and working on their laptops during the night, and not only the people in the offices, but the people at airports. So you've got these lovely freighters coming in with with pallets of cargo, and then you suddenly have Mikko with his 350 or other people coming in, and the entire upper deck is covered with thousands of little boxes. And you've got these guys that are carrying little boxes out of the airplanes, and nobody's complained. And airports, even small little airports. We did some flights to a small airport here in Germany, in Erfurt. And, the pride of these people when they're getting a flight coming in with PPE, and the willingness to work, doesn't matter what time, night or day. I personally find that just amazing. And we are a small industry. We're an incredibly small industry. I don't know how other industries work, but all I can say is I've definitely seen something that I've never seen before, and I'm very, very proud of what we've achieved. And I hope that lasts a long time, and that the pride that everybody and the work that everybody's put in is paid off, and the world is definitely in a better place, certainly with the movement of the PPE, thanks to the air freight industry and everybody who works in it.
Thank you.
But I will remember most, and although I knew it, but I was still surprised to notice how ignorant the rest of the ecosystem is on air cargo. For those people who are dedicated cargo, we knew the importance of air cargo. But since we depend on an ecosystem with airlines, airports, authorities who are much more focused on the passenger side, for me it was shocking to see that in reality the gap between them is even bigger than I ever expected. And that is something I think we have to take some lessons out of this. We should be able to have more understanding of air cargo and the importance for air cargo for the whole aviation system. And I hope that a lot of companies and people have seen that and will remember that. Secondly, for me, it's proud. It's exactly what Rusi said. I think it is amazing what the air cargo industry did, how they did it, how quickly they did it, how smooth they did it. Competing airports talking to each other, finding solutions to keep the supply chain going. And I think that is unique and cannot be mentioned enough. And at the same time, I also hope, but at the same time, I'm also very concerned, but still, I hope that we as air cargo industry, that we use this experience and this proudness to actually start making the change we need. And I'm so concerned that when we go back to normal, we go back in our little corner and start blaming everybody and look for the excuses again not to go for that change. This new pride we have to use to the positive. I mean, very often for a lot of airlines, there is no cargo in the boardroom. I think we should be knocking on the door, and there should be more cargo in more boardrooms, because that's how we get the attention, and that's how we can make the change and support the change. I want airline CEOs in future, instead of investing in, again, a new business class layout and not in cargo, well, maybe we should look at a new system for cargo that is going to be better. And even if they still do the business class seat, as a passenger, I'm okay with it. But making that decision and already thinking about it would be a huge first step. And I think that's what I hope to see in the future.
Well, thank you very much to the three of you for sharing this more personal touch. I think it's also helpful to share these elements as well with our audience. Also, from A4E perspective, we've penned a blog post which is entitled "Don't Let Air Cargo Fly Out of the Spotlight," because indeed we've enjoyed in the last few months also more media attention that we've ever seen, I suppose. And as you also pointed out, it's a good occasion to showcase the industry and try to move forward. So thank you again to the three of you, Mikko, Steve, and Rusi, for taking the time to discuss with me today. Just flagging to participants that they can send us some questions that we'll try to answer in the coming days as well. If there are still elements which are unclear or questions that we haven't addressed, we'll try to answer those. So thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.